Hello, parents, educators, and nerdy D&D fans. You have found our new home for Area of Effect, a talk show where we discuss how tabletop role-playing games benefit the whole family. We're currently in process of shifting all our old but golden episodes over to this new channel by posting a new episode every weekday until we catch back up to our new episodes. We would love your help getting this new channel up and running with a follow, share, or review. And thanks for joining us on our quest to bring more adventurers to the table.
Do you like dungeons?
If you kill us all in this dungeon, how are you gonna feel?
14 acid damage.
How about dragons?
Is there a dragon here, though?
There could be.
I'm Paul, the DM and producer of Make Believe Heroes, a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons adventure for all ages. If you're looking for top quality production values, including music, sound effects, with humor, heart, and occasionally a bit of horror, then go now and check out Make Believe Heroes, a proud member of the Potteration Network.
A Kids Table podcast.
Who's welcome at the D&D table? That's one of the questions at the heart of the final scene of the final episode of the final season of Stranger Things, which just dropped recently. In that last scene, it's a preteen girl, Holly, who takes the role of the dungeon master at the table. A scene that's made a profound impact on the online TTRPG community. What does it take to welcome people who haven't traditionally been invited to the table, though? And why does it matter? In today's episode, Allison talks with Becca Bix of WomenPlayDND.co about the importance of inclusion and the hard work it takes to get everyone a seat at the table.
Welcome to Area of Effect, a podcast by the Kids Table, where we discuss how tabletop RPGs benefit kids. And today, as a special little bonus, we're also talking about how women, queer folks, and other marginalized groups benefit from TTRPGs. And we still answer your questions about playing TTRPGs with the kids at your own table. So to get started, let's talk about who we have here today on the podcast. This, as usual, is your friendly, nerdy podcast host, D&D mom, Star Wars fan, animal lover, and avid fantasy book reader, Allison. And today I'm joined by Becca Bix of Women Play D&D, a platform that uplifts women, queer, and other marginalized folks and runs safe, inclusive classes to teach new adventurers how to play D&D. Welcome to Area of Effect, Becca.
Thank you so much for having me, Allison.
Yay! I am so excited to chat with you today. I have been following your account for a while now, and I feel that we jive. Like, I feel like you're trying to do for women the same thing that I'm trying to do for kids, and just feel like we're really aligned in our perspectives in that way, where it's kind of like parallel tracks.
A lot of crossover audience.
So as we're chatting, my audience of Area Effect may or may not know you or be familiar with Women Play D&D. So let's get started with some tavern talk and have a little friendly chat as if we're sitting by the fire in a cozy fantasy world tavern, sipping something delicious from a warm steaming mug, and let's just get to know you a little bit. So my first question is, who introduced you to TTRPGs in the first place, and what about that experience led you down this whole path?
It was Brennan Lee Mulligan who introduced me to D&D.
Wow, personally?
Yeah, God, in my dreams. Through Dimension 20. At the end of last year of 2024, I was going through a period of pretty intense grief and spending a lot of time in bed where we had a projector, and I was watching episode after episode after episode of Dimension 20 Fantasy High. And I was watching this group of diverse millennials who were all people that I would have sat at the table with in middle school, And I was like, wait, if this is how fun D&D can be, how inclusive, how accepting, how world changing it can be, I want in, because I watched the story of Kristen Appleby's, who is a cleric, and she goes on this journey of finding out that her God sucks. And I was on a journey of my own deconstructing from religion, and I saw a lot of myself in Kristen Appleby's through her journey. And so she and Brennan Lee Mulligan are what got me in there. And Brennan, if you're listening, one of my goals is to meet you and have you tell me that you're proud of me.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be so cathartic?
It would be. It would fix me. I'd be fine.
That would be wonderful. So just in 2024 was when you first got introduced to TTRPGs. Amazing.
Yeah, I started watching it probably October, November, and then the election happened, and I started going. I was in therapy, had been for several years, but in my therapy, I started saying, I need to do something. It's time for me to step up and act and figure out what can I do with the life I have right now, because I am a mom and a spouse, and I have a lot of real life responsibilities, but I also had a lot of time where I could do something. And so I found D&D and I decided to start playing. I tried to get a table together. It went as well as one would expect a brand new DM who doesn't know anything and didn't read the manual beforehand would go.
Wait, you started as the DM?
I started as the DM. I texted one of
Wow.
my friends and I was like, we should play D&D. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And I texted another friend who'd been playing for 20 years and she was like, please let me come to this because it's going to go bad if you don't. And I was like, how hard can it be? And it was hard. It was really, really hard. So I was like, all right, before we play again, I'll go find a book that'll teach us how to play D&D and I'll be fine. Like, I'll just find it. And that wasn't out there. And so then I started looking for books about why it wasn't out there and books about women specifically. And that wasn't out there. That's not true. There was one book written by Shelley Mazanoble about the Girl's Guide to D&D from like 2005, but it's very 2005.
Love Shelley.
It talks about
She's been on this show.
Has she?
She came on talking about her book, How to Dungeon Master Parenting.
Yes. I haven't read that one yet, but
She is hilarious, so witty.
I hope I get to chat with her someday. See, I'm just manifesting all these different things. But when I got into deciding to DM, that was when I really started to realize how hard it is to get into this game. I bought the player's handbook, and most of it was incomprehensible because even though I had seen hundreds of hours of actual play, I tried to play by myself. There wasn't practical application from the book, and there was a lot of implied knowledge left that I needed someone to teach me that I didn't really have someone to teach me. And so at our second session, as we were stumbling through it, one of my friends goes, Becca, this is so hard. I bet you could write a book to make it easier. And I was like, I bet I could. And then I was like, wait, I bet I could. And so then I started researching, like, what would go into that? What would I need? Is there something like this out there already? And then the internet told me that in order to publish a book these days, you need a social media audience. So then I started on social media.
Wow, what a crazy, windy path that you took to get here. I love it. So are you writing this book?
I am. Yeah, I am. I am just about to get signed up with a developmental editor because I realized I need like basically an English teacher to be like, here's what a chapter has. Here's what parts you need to put. Here, you got an A on writing this chapter. So that's the stage I'm in right now. Is I have a very basic draft and we're going to be working it into an actual book over the next year. And then we'll see. I haven't decided whether I want to try and publish independently, whether I want to try and get an agent and publish commercially, because I do think there is such a desire from folks to learn right now that a commercial book could be successful, but we'll just see what that journey looks like.
Remind me after the show because I have some folks who have published both independently and through publishers that maybe could give you some thoughts on their experience.
Heck
yeah. I do want to keep the focus on you, but this episode will be coming out around the time that we will be starting to tease. Ryan and I have written a learn as you play family starter game for D&D.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's gonna be coming out this summer. Yes. So I don't know how much I can say about it, but the cool thing about it, it's not a book, so it's a little bit different, and it is specifically geared for, like WotC's D&D stuff is 12 and up. So ours is like specifically focusing on the under 12 audience.
Yeah.
And, but what I really like about it is rather than making you read this whole player's handbook, you're just introduced to the rules that are relevant as they come up in the adventure. So you're just like playing it, and then it teaches you a rule. So
I am obsessed with this. My background is in elementary education. I was a teacher for 10 years. Yeah, I taught 2nd and 4th grade, which was a true treat, and that is very much how I'm treating writing the book. I want it to be something that I could have picked up when I wanted to start playing last year and open to the page, and then it would be like, read this to your group, and then I would read it to the group, and then we would all practice the rule, and then we would move on
Yes.
sequentially.
Yes. That reminds me of like project-based learning.
Yes, it's very much that. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm planning to incorporate a lot of checks for understanding and a lot of opportunities for like mini games, basically, where you're practicing all of the different skills before you're adding the next one.
Oh my gosh, I'm so psyched for this. Let me know when it's like about to come out and we'll definitely have you back on the show. I don't know if you know this, but Ryan and my background are also as educators. I was with middle school and high school, and he was with elementary, working for the same company for a lot of years. That's how we met. And then when we left our jobs, that is when we decided to start this.
Heck yeah, that's so cool.
So let's get back to getting to know you. Can you tell us specifically what is Women Play D&D all about, and what inspired you to start sharing it with the TTRPG community?
Love that. Women Play D&D is all about making a safe space for those who haven't been traditionally included in the TTRPG culture that has been developed over the last 50 plus years. It started from a culture of white men for white men, and that was evident in the work that was being published by the company. That was evident by the people who were attending games and cons in the community. And so my big question was, why is D&D this way, and what can I do to get it to be different than that? And the answer was, D&D is this way because that's the way it was built. It was designed to be exclusionary. But people have taken it, changed it. Now it is a tool of community. It's a tool of connection. It's a tool of storytelling, of trauma support. And I wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to get access to that tool as I can. So the whole work, everything boils down to, how can I make TTRPGs more safe, accessible, and fun? And the values that lead me through that are community, always thinking that community makes us stronger, connection, that one-to-one human connection that drives us through life and hard times, and compassion, starting with yourself. Because I found that through the last 5 years or so of intense self-compassion practice, that only expands towards everyone around me and further out. So compassion starting with me is one of the big values.
I love that. Compassion starting with yourself is something I may have not known how to put words to that, but that is something that I see folks developing through playing D&D all the time, because the dice rolls are built in to make you fail sometimes, and you have to learn to be okay with that, and you have to learn that it's okay to rely on others sometimes when you can't do something yourself. And you have to learn what it looks like to pick yourself back up and try again in a different way, and be okay with how that last thing happened, even though it didn't go the way you expected.
Yes. And in America, particularly where we live right now, there is a deep need for community that's not just online, that's people that you see regularly, that know who you are, that are going to ask, how did that doctor's appointment go, that are going to speak up when you say, I'm having this problem, and come to your aid. And so I really see the more people I can get into safe tables, the more of a practical difference I can make in the world, because people are forming real connections.
Absolutely. I have talked a lot of times on the show about how, like, since the information age, the more that our information and world has expanded, at the same time, the more isolated we have become. And that, I think, is a large part of the reason why we're seeing like record high numbers of mental health struggles for teenagers, because that's the audience that I know. Right. And I'm sure that's also true for adults.
It's true for women. That's for sure. It's true for queer folks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Coming up, Allison and Becca talk about that Stranger Things finale and what it means for the TTRPG community. Stay tuned for more from Area of Effect.
So now it's time to level up and get to our topic of the day, which I know is a topic that people are going to want to hear about. Today we are talking about how Stranger Things is changing the landscape of the TTRPG community. I originally invited you to come on this episode because I saw you getting excited about what the final episode or the final season you feel like means for women, and I at the same time was really excited about what it means for kids. So I was like, let's talk about this. There's some definitely from synergy here. So tell me first, when did you first watch Stranger Things? Like, did you watch it from 10 years ago, which I can't believe it's not for 10 years?
Yeah, I've been watching that show for 10 years since it came out in 2015. Before I had kids, my life was so different. Didn't know anything about D&D and just was enjoying it as a pop culture phenomenon along with everybody else. So it was really fun this season to be like, oh, I know what they're talking about now. Oh, I get that reference. Oh, actually, he would be a warlock, not a sorcerer, but...
Right? Yes. Louder. Yeah, I agree. Although I did see one person make a good point. In the 80s, there wasn't a distinction between warlock and sorcerer. It was just magic user. So I guess that's what he is.
So it's fine. It's fine. It's fine, Will. We love you for who you are.
Yeah. Although I'm still sad that he didn't get a little bit more of a bigger role in the final episode, but you know. Yeah, so you watched it before you had played D&D. So do you think that had played any role in you becoming interested in watching Dimension 20 or anything like that?
I definitely think so. I mean, the more that we have background knowledge about a topic, the less intimidating it will be to go into like a culture. So if before Stranger Things, my context for D&D was creepy basement dudes, which again is a well-deserved reputation because of the way the game was designed. But D&D showed it as less creepy, you know, more kid-oriented, and then showing that they were able to be empowered through the game. I picked up on that as well, but it didn't really give me like, I gotta go play vibes, but I think it would have if I had just watched this final season and not started this work yet.
Yeah, and it seems to be doing that now, and I'm kind of surprised that just with the finale coming out, I've seen a flood of so many more people saying like, now I want to start playing D&D. How do I get started? And I'm like, haven't you been watching for 10 years? Like, why is it just now? Which
I think it's that feeling of like, we've now seen these kids on their complete campaign journey. And when you see that wrap up, it gives me the feeling like when I watched that final season of like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing now. This feels good. And so I can see why people after having watched the journey would be like, oh wait, that's what you get out of this? That's what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about that final scene in the final episode of Stranger Things season 5 when the kids are playing D&D. So I'm just going to say we are going to talk about it, and there will be spoilers if you haven't watched it. So skip ahead or finish the season and come back if necessary. So why was that particular scene so significant to you personally?
So the scene we're talking about is where Mike and his friends have finished their final game of that campaign, Curse of Strahd, which sounds really fun. And they've put all of their binders back up on the shelf, and Mike is going back up the stairs. And then unexpectedly, I mean, I literally gasped when this happened. Holly and her friends push through the door, run down the stairs. They're all yelling at each other and talking over each other, which I relate to so much. And the way the camera follows them, it transitions from Mike to Holly. It's a very clear passing down of the tools, the story, the adventure to the next group of kids who are ready. We saw Holly go through her Holly the heroic journey, and we know that she is fully capable of doing the dungeon master's job. We know that Mike knows she's capable, and it was so poignant to me, not only that they decided to keep the story going by passing it on to the next generation of kids, but that they passed it on to a woman who looks very similar to I did when I was her age. You know, I was a blonde white girl who never knew that this was even an option. I was raised evangelical, so I probably wouldn't have been able to play D&D anyways because of the remnants of the Satanic Panic from the 80s. But I would have never known that it was an option. And so the fact that kids and women are seeing representation on TV of women playing D&D is more powerful than just saying you can do it. because seeing the story play out gives you belief that you could make a story like this too. I'm really believing in the power of writing our own stories, of seeing stories, of stories that we see in media shaping our actual world. And this was a really important turning point for me.
Yeah. And if you look at, when they play D&D in season 1, it's just the boys, right? And then when they start playing D&D with the Hellfire Club, what is that called?
Yeah,
Later on,
Club.
it's all boys and then Erica. Lucas's little sister, which I think is
God
so
for
cute
Erica.
because when it comes down to her last roll at the end and it's all these older boys cheering her on, and she's the only girl. She's one of the only black kids there, and she's the youngest, right? But she's the one that it all rides on at the end. And then in the end, you see Max joins the game, so now you have another female at the table. And then when Holly comes down, it's 3 girls and 2 boys at the table. So I was just that feeling of, there's more female representation than male representation, and I don't even think I've ever experienced that. And I've been playing this game since 2011. And usually I'm the only female, although I did play a long-running campaign with my sister-in-law for a while. But I've always been I have an older brother, so I've always been kind of a girl who's been comfortable being in those male-dominated spaces and roles and kind of being a tomboy or whatever. But that excited me. It does feel a little bit maybe unrealistic for the 80s for that to have happened.
Yeah. But we're playing pretend, and the show is pretend anyway, so why not?
But I loved seeing that progression, right, of more and more female representation being welcomed, even through the seasons of Stranger Things.
And I also, speaking about Max specifically, I love the journey that they showed the boys taking with her, where when she first wanted to join, she said, I'll be a Zoomer. And they were like, you can't be a Zoomer. What's a Zoomer? That's not real. And at the end, we see that she is a Zoomer, which means that they homebrewed her whatever she needed for that class, which is exactly the change I'm looking to make in the culture, away from, no, you have to do it the way that it says, to we can do it a way that makes everybody have fun. And that can be our priority.
Complete rule of cool. And, I'll mention that when we first are introduced to Max, I think the first time the boys are introduced to Max is when she gets the high score on that, the arcade game, right?
The video
and they're
game,
like,
yeah.
Who's Mad Max? Who's Mad Max? And they're looking for a boy, right? And then when they realize it's her, they're stunned. A girl beat us at an arcade game, and then she's so cool and is even better at the things they like than they are, which I think is a really cool moment.
Gosh, she's so cool.
Yeah. So for me, watching that scene, it felt like a passing of the torch, just like what you said, with the older kids putting away their characters with the binders on the shelves and exiting the basement, which is the site of so many adventures and happy memories in their otherwise extremely traumatic childhood, which I'm very concerned for these children. Yeah.
Huckins is not a great place to grow up.
Oh, right. And then Mike turns back at the top of the stairs and looks longingly at the basement like he's leaving it behind, like it's this moving into adulthood moment, which kind of makes sense as they're about to graduate high school and fly in the nest, although we don't really know exactly.
I don't believe for a second those kids
home.
Stopped playing, but I do believe that moment was a big transition for them.
Yeah. So my husband, who watches the show with me, kind of looked at me and said, oh, they're leaving it behind. And that bothered me that he had interpreted it that way, because I hadn't seen it that way at first, but if he did, then certainly other people watching it did. And I was like, but it's not a kid's game. These kids still need it. I mean, what I mean by that, obviously, I believe in kids playing the game, but it's not only a kid's game.
Exactly.
These kids who have been through this trauma and have emotional depth beyond their years, right? I think they need this game even more than the other young adults that are their peers.
But of course they're going to cry at the end of their campaign that also happened on the night of their high school graduation. Anybody's going to be emotional when that happens.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I fully believe in the interpretation that they're going to go on to continue to play many more games of D&D. But I thought the juxtaposition of the younger kids, Holly, Derek, and the other three, rushing down so excitedly, which like spin off anyone for Holly and her group. I love how Holly just picks up the book with zero preparation and says, I'll look in the manual for some sort of starter campaign in here. And I was like, dude, Mike, why did you drop the ball in teaching your younger sister how to play this game when it's such a big part of your life? And then one of the kids complains, like, why do you get to be the DM? And she's just like, well, it's my house, and it was my idea, I think she says. So, and they just kind of let it be. And they're like, look at this castle, it's so cute. And it was funny how they were like fighting over who gets to be the DM, which is the opposite as most groups.
Yeah, about how adults are. Adults are begging for a DM.
You're trying to
please
because
be
the
a
adults
DM.
know how much work they know how much work it is, right? But the juxtaposition of their like joy and excitement after the heavy emotional conclusion of the older kids campaign just speaks to their youth, their innocence, their inexperience. You know, not all of them have gone through the terrifying monster face-to-face with monsters
Maybe weren't awake for it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the experience the older kids have gone through added this emotional depth to their personal character and even to their play, as it made the game feel more connected to reality compared to how they played the game in earlier seasons when they were in costumes and they were laughing and it was a little more lighthearted. The stakes became higher because it's so very real for somebody who has gone face to face with real life monsters and experienced personal loss. And I think as we grow older and we collect more and more of those experiences where we do face monsters in our life, real or figurative, and suffer loss in any sense of the word, I think that builds up this need for the kind of connection and experience that you can have through playing TTRPGs. So that's why I think they're going to keep playing.
Absolutely. I agree.
Was there anything you didn't like about how they played D&D and Stranger Things?
About how they played D&D? I don't think so. I really liked how Mike just used his binder as his DM screen, because I don't usually use a DM screen. And it really shows the humble beginnings of the game before you had access to dice and dice trays and all of the accessories that come with it, because one of the things I tell people to keep it accessible is that you don't have to spend any money to get started on this. This is one of the last bastions of non-capitalistic hobby that you can have, really, truly. And so I loved seeing that by them. I didn't love when I think the only thing is I didn't love when they told Max she couldn't be a Zoomer. Like, why? Like, that just, be creative. But I think that was a sign of like, they were still in an old reality where they believed that things were one way. You know, they'd gone through some of the trauma. They'd seen the Upside Down. They'd seen what had happened to Will. But even Will was still very much in denial. Like, I'm fine. I'm not having visions. I'm not barfing up demodogs. Yeah. Like, everything's okay. Oh, and I think that shows that through their real life journey and their D&D journey, they learned that multiple truths can exist, that many things can happen, that they can trust themselves. They don't have to trust the rules and the guidance. They can trust what they know to be true and do what they need for their group.
Yeah, and they can make changes and be willing to like give up on that rigid sense of, I almost want to say it's like lawful good, right? Yeah, where you're like, I'm following the rules because that's what the law says, but recognize that that's not necessarily the highest good for everybody in your community. And so you're willing to let some of that go to honor their experience and believe their experience when they're saying, hey, it's not fun for me to play the way that you want it to be played. This is what's fun for me. And for them to say, okay, I hear you. I see your perspective. You're important to me enough that I'm willing to let go of this rules as written nature, right? And go with the rule of cool so that you'll have a positive experience. And I think that's what we do when we play with kids. I know you have a little bit of experience playing with kids. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that is the table that I got my actual DM experience from. I sat down with, I play with they're now 7 and 9. They started when they were 6 and 8, 2 kiddos. And we originally had one grown up in the party, but they've kind of dropped out because playing with kids is a different experience. But we really just started from not knowing anything. I opened up the book to the classes and I said, which one do you want to be? And one of them was like a barbarian and the other one was like a fighter. And I found out later that what he actually was a monk. I just didn't know what a monk was at the time. And so we just ran it as a fighter. And he has now adapted to he's decided he's no longer a monk. He's a rogue. So we just updated his character to turn into a rogue. He was like, I used to be good at punching, but now I'm really good at sneaking. And I was like, great, why not? And one of the things I learned from that campaign was about DM burnout, because running a kids campaign is a lot more work than running an adult campaign, in that you really have to remain in the DM seat as a strong holder of boundaries and expectations. And it's a lot more. It's teaching in so many ways. The two kids I work with, one of them right now, his goal through D&D is to work on story sequence and retell. He has a lot of trouble telling, excuse me, retelling stories accurately. So we're practicing that. We're practicing what are characters, what is the setting, what's the beginning, middle, end. The other kid is working on social skills, because there's a hard time waiting turns. He's got a lot of big feelings. So there's emotional outbursts that we're working through. And once I identified that these kids needed specific supports, it's been much easier for me to DM them, because I started out just saying yes to anything because I didn't know what to say no to. And then as I learned more about playing with adults, I tried to hold them to adult standards. And that just led to me being really, really frustrated most of the time, because I was trying to move through a story that was way above their level. So now we're working through the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle starter set, and I am taking the lore like way down. When we met the dragon who is in charge, and I just keep repeating, I'm Runara, and I'm in charge here, and I'm a dragon, and we worship Bahamut here because he was the first dragon. And then they'll be like, wait, a good dragon or a bad dragon? A good dragon. Remember, there was a bad dragon here and it got buried, and we don't use modifiers yet. They're not ready for that. We just do flat dice rolls, and I just make up the answer based on the dice roll. And we don't sit around a table. I sit at the couch because the kids are both neurodivergent and have a lot of need for movement. So they are acting out most of the story in front of me. Yesterday, when we were playing, they decided that they wanted to make breakfast for everybody. So they had like a pancake. They were like miming out a pancake like production line with each other. And they were like, and we're making breakfast for a breakfast dessert. And so it's really, it's been great practice for me in letting go, and also identifying what really matters in a game. And what matters is different depending on the table you're at. For my adult games, what matters is making sure everybody's having a fun time, but also moving through a story in a collaborative way. What matters for my kids' game is these very basic social skills and basic story skills, and also making sure that we're all having fun. And I did take a break for about a month where I talked to the kids and I said, I'm not having fun. There's a lot of arguing happening. I don't know how to support you when we're sitting at the table. And I just took a month off and was like, I'm not even going to think about DMing them again until I'm ready to. And we meet on Wednesdays. So I used that time to do, like, we made Christmas cookies. We went on adventures. We took a break and lived life until I was ready to come back to support them, because I don't want anyone to play when it's not fun.
Yeah. So when you came back, had they changed, or had you put in place like more guidelines?
I put more guidelines in place. We'd started out with binders that I had found on Etsy of like all the different pages, and I was like, we're done with those because those are too overwhelming for you. And I got poster boards, and all we have on our poster boards right now is a picture of our characters, we drew their weapons, and we have what species and class they are. And that's all we have right now. And as we start to move through the story, and I feel like they're starting to get the hang of the basics of what is my character, how does the story work, then I'll add in things like modifiers and skills. But right now we do flat rolls, and when we do combat, it's like all bad guys have 10 hit points, and they all have an AC of 12. And that's it. You know, we're fighting zombies, we're fighting bats, we're fighting whatever, but they all have 10 hit points because we're just practicing right now the mechanics of how the game actually runs.
I love that. And that's a stretch for them, even stripping it down to the basics like that, like taking a turn, listening to somebody else's turn, like paying attention, caring about what they want to do and how to address the problem that you've presented. Like they're learning so many developmental and social skills, even just through that. Like,
they
who
learn a lot of
cares?
social skills with NPCs. That one of the
yeah.
kids showed up at a temple last week, and the person came to greet them, and he said, "I don't trust you." So then the NPC got to be like, "Hey, I'm in charge here. And actually, when you say that, did you know that makes me feel like you're my enemy now?" And so instead of doing things implicitly like I would for adults and just acting it out, I'm using the NPCs in the world to explicitly explain how things work.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love the way that you're playing with them. It reminds me, I created the 15-minute D&D series. Created it originally inspired by my then 4-year-old neurodivergent kiddo who wanted to play D&D but could not sit at the table and could not focus for more than 15 minutes and could not handle the rules, right? So in the beginning, we have simplified it so much, and I won't go into the details here, but in the beginning, like, you're basically just making dice rolls and practicing storytelling together.
Which is the
and
same
taking
way I
turns.
teach adults too,
Yes.
I start with adults with no modifiers, with no species or background. I start with dice rolls, and then we add those components on. And so I was like, I just got to do that with my kids, but way slower.
Yep. Yeah, and so we have each set of 5 15-minute sessions. We add one new rule that you're learning each time. So theoretically, if I ever get to the end of that series, they will have then learned all the rules in D&D. But man, is it hard to find time to write. But anyway.
True.
So let's talk a little bit more about D&D TTRPG culture. We touched on this a little bit, but then versus now, like D&D came out in 1974. Obviously, our cultural landscape has changed. We've talked a lot about the people who may have influenced that. How do you think, from your perspective, TTRPG communities have kept up with the times and the cultural changes, particularly around an expanding understanding of inclusion, and where are we still lacking?
I think a lot of it begins with the geography. Much like in D&D, when you're starting a campaign and you look at the map and the world around informs what's happening in the scenario and in the adventure, D&D started in the Midwest, and as it has expanded outwards from the Midwest, it has started to include more and more cultures. And as more creators and more writers and players and DMs get access to the game, they begin to bring stories from their own cultures that shape the game. I'm thinking of projects like Kaboa and other ones that make worlds based on cultures that Gary wouldn't have thought of, like South America, like Asia. And I think that has been one of the biggest changes over time is the spread. And how, as it spreads out to more people put their own spin on it, which makes the game better. And so that's why my commitment to access, I think, matters so much, because the more people I can get past the gate of learning to play, the more inclusive the game becomes by default because of the people who are in the culture. So I really think it's an expansion of access that has changed the culture over time.
Yeah, and I think it does take, maybe unfortunately, some boldness on the parts of those who were not previously included to say, like, no, I want to be included and I deserve to be included.
Yeah.
And, you know, it should
yeah, I mean,
be
there's
on
no
those
incentive
folks to ask
for, yeah, there's no incentive for, again, we'll say typically, there's nuance in every part of these discussions, but typically cishet white men, there's not a lot of incentive for you to proactively make your game welcoming for folks on the whole, because you've already got what you need. You've got access to a table, you've got friends to play with, they're playing the way that you like, and so why would you work hard? And so I mean, it feels dramatic to say, but it's not traditionally been the role of the oppressor to make space for the oppressed. It is the role of the oppressed to come in and demand space, which is unfair by definition. It is unfair, and it's something that Black folks know a lot about. It's something that Indigenous folks know a lot about. And so I take a lot of my learning. I very intentionally direct my voices away from men these days and towards women, especially women of color and queer folks, because they have been doing this fight for access forever, you know? And so what can I learn from them to use my white privilege to make space for them? Because
Yeah.
the men have if your worldview is I have what I need and why can't you just join my table? Like, it's easy, but you don't have the perspective of why it's not easy and you're not doing the curious work to find out. Then yeah, it's left to marginalized folks always to make the difference.
Yeah, and I think it's our role as two people that do experience white privilege to uplift and amplify those voices because we come from a larger platform inherently connected to our white privilege, right? But to pass that on, to share the voices and make sure it reaches a larger community. And it's also our role to say, I believe you. If you're
Yes.
saying this is how you're experiencing
Yes.
this, that is truth, and nothing I can say about, well, I don't see it that way. I don't see what you're talking about. You're not really being excluded. No, like, I believe you. You're telling me this is your experience, so it is truth.
Yeah, and that's a really, really important point you brought up. I'm really glad you did.
Yeah. So I am curious, kind of in wrapping up this section, from your experience with Women Play D&D, and especially like teaching new people how to play D&D and how to build and find safe spaces. What exactly do you tell women and queer folks in your classes about finding a safe table? Do you recommend that they seek out tables that are women only? Do you recommend they ask particular questions, or what do they look for?
This is the question I get the most that is the hardest to answer, is like, how do I join? Because there is no like 1, 2, 3. Here's what you do. Guaranteed. It'll get you a table. There's a lot of just read a book, just go to a game store, just play with me. And those are like, we're trying, you know, people have been trying. We've been trying to form tables. We've been trying to read a book. We've been trying to find people who will teach us, and it's still too hard. And so my advice tends to lean towards, if you think you're ready to play, you are already ready to play. And you get to now go on the journey of discovering how you are going to get to play. That might mean you find a Discord server where people already have tables forming and you know it's safe. But Discord's not accessible to everybody. That might mean you can go to a game store and join a table, but in many cities, including mine, that's not an accessible option because there aren't safe game stores. The game stores in my city, I don't recommend to people because I don't feel welcomed and included. I haven't felt unsafe there, but I have heard stories of people feeling unsafe. And like you said, I believe those people when they tell me that. So that's not a guarantee. Just read a book doesn't work because the books aren't accessible teaching tools. It's a community game that you need access to a community to play. So the advice I give right now is like, you kind of just got to get in there and muddle through for now. I am writing a book that the idea is that you will be able to buy it, open it, take it to that game night, and sit down with friends that you already know and play. But right now, the best thing you need to do is find a safe group. And that could be friends, family, coworkers, your barista, anybody who you think is going to have like a good vibe and mesh with you and feel supportive as you learn this game together. And know that it's not going to work out probably your first, second, third try. You might get a table together and they'll do one session and then life happens and we can't get together again. You might get a group together at a coffee shop and it goes well for 6 months and then it falls apart. And that's something I found about this game, is that it is collaborative, it's community based, and it takes intention to get going. And there are some people for who that is too much right now, and that's okay. It's also okay if you just need to wait a little longer until you're ready to do or have the capacity to do this, or find someone who finds you and invites you to join a table. So that's where I feel most frustrated, is that I don't have a straightforward answer of like, here's how you do it, because that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, but I love that you are honest with them, that like, this is going to be a tough mountain to climb and it's probably going to take a couple tries and it's going to probably be emotionally exhausting and you're going to have to be vulnerable and, you know, put a lot into it before you find something successful, but it is worth it once you find that.
And especially to those folks who have tried before and were sent away or were pushed away and now have that negative association with it, to them I say, like, that's okay. That makes sense. It wasn't your fault that you were treated that way. It's not your fault that you don't want to play, and you don't have to. You don't have to if it's not fun. Because that's something I'll see too, is people pushing like, no, just try again, just try again, just try again. And some people, it's not. Some people have had such a bad experience with it that they're not going to try again, and that's okay. Then we support the people who are ready.
We, at the kids table, we have 3 table rules that we share before every game. And the third one is, this is a game that's meant to be fun. And if it stops being fun, then we stop playing. For how long? I don't know. It depends on what's going on, right? And we have had to do that multiple times with the kids at the table when something is too heavy or something is uncomfortable or somebody says something you don't like or whatever. And so we take a break and kind of debrief what's going on, and hopefully can come back to the table in whatever period of time is necessary. So in wrapping this up, let's move on to our lightning round. So now it's time to strap on our boots of haste and get ready for the lightning round. For this round, you, Becca, will roll a D8 and then answer the related question that I have that you have not seen on my screen, but I promise they're pretty easy. And we'll do this 3 times. So why don't you give us our first roll?
Our first roll, ooh, it's an 8.
An 8. What is your favorite campaign setting?
Oh gosh, I don't, here's my true answer. I don't care. I am not a world builder myself. And so I don't care what land I wind up in, as long as there's other people there that want to play and have fun with me.
That's so cool. Have you played in non-high fantasy campaigns?
Yeah, I played one game, in one of those, again, one-offs that fell apart. Was going to be a like post-punk, we were going to be taking down a big corporation in a city that had been overrun by Amazon type things, and was like a gritty cyberpunk sort of situation. And that was so fun. And that was where I initially developed that druid halfling character, and I ported her over to the Fourth Wing world because I wanted her to keep going. So yeah, setting doesn't matter to me as long as we're having fun and there's a problem I can solve.
I love it. Give us another roll.
Okay, we got a 4 that time.
A 4. Name your favorite enemy.
Patriarchy, I think. Yeah, is the one that I love. Yeah.
Louder. Yeah. I love it. Great. One more roll.
Okay, 3.
3. Name a spell you've always wanted to try but haven't yet had the chance.
I really want to see how Wish could mess up a campaign in a really dramatic way, and how the DM would handle what the players would do if a wizard
Send
wished.
your DM into a panic coma.
Yeah, I would love that.
I'm too scared to introduce that into my campaigns, but yeah, maybe one day when I grow up or something. All right, so before we sign off for the day, how can our listeners find you online?
Well, if you want to find me, Becca Bix, you can go to my website, womenplaydnd.co. If the person who has .com is listening to this, sell it to me. And also on the social medias, Instagram and Threads, which are limited. I know there's a lot of people on the TikToks and the Facebooks, but I'm not one of them. So Instagram, Threads. And then if you go to any of those places, you will find a link either in my bio or right on my website that can take you to my Discord server, where 1,100 folks and counting are learning to play and support each other and build tables. And we're certifying safe DMs, and lots of cool stuff is happening there. So we'd love to have you hop in.
Oh, I love that. Well, thanks for joining me today, Becca. It has been a true pleasure. And to our listeners, please email any questions you may have to questions@thekidstablednd.com so we can give you a response in a future episode. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Area of Effect. Check out our original actual play D&D show with kids at the table on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Be a part of the ongoing conversation by emailing questions@thekidstablednd.com. Find resources to bring adventure to your own table at thekidstablednd.com/shop, and join our quest to introduce more kids to D&D at patreon.com/thekidstablednd. Because when kids are at the table, everyone wins.